Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It is the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofcruising.net. It helps support the channel through our partnership with Where's Walters Travel. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul. I am delighted to welcome this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, Kristen Owens. Kristen's debut novel, Elizabeth Sails, by Rising Action Publishing and Simon & Schuster, launched 2 days ago. What can be better than discussing with the author the use of an actual cruise ship, the Queen Elizabeth, as a setting? Kristen told me after living in Europe, my husband and I moved to the U.S. on the Queen Mary II. The voyage was a life-changing experience. 10 years later, I've got my sea legs, which happen to be a little chunkier because I've taken a fair number of cruises and haven't missed a single meal. And I've finagled the way of sailing more frequently as a speaker. I entertain and educate passengers on writing, literature, and wine. So I can't feel too guilty because, hey, I'm working. People, I spend about 6 months on ships and get my best writing done on board. It's like a quintessential writing retreat with tea and scones daily at 3:30 p.m. To date, I've taken over a dozen cruises as a passenger and over a dozen as a speaker. Kristen has experience sailing with Princess, Celebrity, Cunard, and Viking. Kristen holds a PhD in higher education and is an award-winning faculty member with over 25 years university experience. Now a full-time writer in sticky Southwest Florida, Kristen has over 100 bylines as a contributor for celebrated magazines such as Wine Enthusiast, Writer's Digest, and 5280. She holds certifications with the Court of Master Sommeliers and Cicerone, and travels the world writing about wonderful wines, beautiful beers, and surprising spirits. Her personal essays have won honorable mentions for 2018 and the New Millennium Writing Awards. Awarded finalists for the 2019 New Letters Award in Nonfiction, and included in Rise, Colorado's Book of the Year 2020. Kristen is being featured in the Writer's Digest September-October issues Breaking In column. Welcome, Kristen, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here with you, Paul.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's October, the leaves are changing, or I'm in Florida, so some of the leaves are changing.
It's good to meet you virtually. Before we discuss your interesting career, tell our listeners about yourself in general. Where you're from, where you live, family, professional background, anything you would like to share with us.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and I have lots of family still there. But my education took me to Pennsylvania, and then jobs took me to Maryland, and then my husband took me to Alaska and Germany. And then upon his retirement, we moved to Colorado, where we stayed probably the longest we've ever stayed anywhere, which was in Fort Collins, Colorado. We were there for 9 years. We loved it. And recently we've moved to Florida. We've been here for 2 years. So we've had lots of experiences around the world. We love to travel. I love to travel. When I was a college student, I was a German major. So, of course, I had to go to Germany and just fell in love with Europe, fell in love with the idea of learning about new places, experiencing new cultures and food and beer and wine. And that has followed me throughout my lifetime. So, I used to be a university administrator. I worked at Penn State, University of Maryland, University of Alaska, Matsu College, Ames Community College in Colorado, and I have always had a foot in teaching. I love being in the classroom, and I think it's because I love performing.
There you
I
go.
love being in front of an audience, and but most importantly, I love taking a really difficult subject and making it fun and accessible to students. So that I feel is one of my strengths. And I've learned at this age, at the age of 55, you just have to go with your strength sometimes and not fight it. And that's why I love education and I love being an instructor. So that has followed me to this
Now,
day.
you mentioned that your husband brought you to or took you to Alaska, and I think you said
Yes.
Germany. So I'm going to guess he
Yes.
was in the military.
You are correct, Paul. When we met, we were 36 years old. So we met a little later in life, and we both were very focused on our careers. So when we met, we had these really successful careers, and he was a major in the U.S. Air Force, and his next assignment was to Alaska. And so we went to Alaska. And then his next assignment was to Germany, and he retired as a lieutenant colonel. So he got to pick where we were going to live next, and that was Colorado.
So in Alaska, did you get to be a tourist at all, or were you just a resident in some
We
nondescript part of Alaska?
we actually owned a home for 4 years in Alaska. It was outside of Anchorage. And growing up in Buffalo, the weather really wasn't an issue for me because I was kind of used to the snow and the cold. But the challenge was really, it's a very, very sparse state when it comes to population. You're either running away from something, you're in the military, or you're with the oil and gas industry. So there's not a lot of people up there. And I found it being a New Yorker, even though a Buffalo New Yorker, it was a little hard to fit in. And but I have to say, I fell in love with fishing. I had no idea I had fishing skills.
hmm
And one of the great things about Alaska is, first of all, it's gorgeous. It is absolutely beautiful. It's tough to live there, especially with the darkness in the wintertime. Everybody goes to Hawaii. But in terms of being a tourist, we did get an opportunity to go see lots of interesting places in Alaska. We actually took a small plane to Nome to see the Iditarod. And that was really something because it's really it's a small town affair, but everybody was there. And Alaska it had some good memories. It had some not so great memories, but I'm glad we did it.
hmm You know, you've mentioned Buffalo a couple of times. Every time you mention Buffalo, you might notice that I've kind of cringed.
Uh-oh.
I did my master's degree in Rochester, so I know Buffalo and that weather well. That's
Mm-hmm.
when I was there. It was literally the frozen tundra. And there's
Yes.
certainly something to climate change because when I was there, pretty much from late October to early March, it snowed every day. Uh, and it's
Yes.
not, it seems like it's nothing like that anymore. But that's, just from what I hear from, friends who still live up in Rochester.
Yeah, my sister's still in Buffalo, and she does send some great photos. It is getting colder right now, and she is in Cheektowaga, so she's right there on the edge of the city. And they do get their fair share. But I do remember, maybe it's because we were younger,
Could
Paul,
be.
but I remember it being a lot more
Yeah.
snow in Buffalo than it is. So I kind of agree with you on
Yeah,
that.
my recollection is my life every day, shoveling snow and studying because I was in a very rigorous program that I probably should have thought more carefully about before I chose it. So it was a tough time for me. So in the intro, I mentioned, or you mentioned, moving back to the U.S. after living in Europe, and you moved back on the Queen Mary 2, and you called that
Yes.
voyage a life-changing experience. Why did you call it that?
Well, being from Buffalo, most everybody in Buffalo is pretty blue collar, mid class. That's kind of who we are. We're very proud of that. Everybody works very hard. Everybody on your street has the same income. So we weren't very affluent. And all of a sudden, here I am, 40 some years old, on this glorious ocean liner. And it was incredible because this is something I only saw in the movies or on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Like Downton Abbey. I kept thinking this is Downton Abbey because that was a big deal at the time, where you actually changed your clothes for dinner. And that, we're lucky to wear pants for dinner in my house, for eating pizza and watching football. You're wearing sweatpants. Yep. But here you're actually in a gown, you're in a tuxedo. My husband wore his full military mess dress. I mean, we looked good, Paul. We looked really good. And I thought, besides a wedding, where would you ever dress up like this? And so that was new to me, but also just the feeling of stepping onto that ship and knowing it was going to take you from one home to a new home for us. It wasn't like, it was very historical in a way because our family crossed over the Atlantic like most everybody else's, but they were not on the Queen Mary 2. They were on other kinds of ships. And to be on a ship of that high luxury and that high caliber was really quite impressive. So, I mean, I could go on, but it was life-changing.
Now, you also mentioned that as a speaker on ships, you get to entertain and educate passengers on writing, literature, and wine. Say something about how your background prepared you to speak on those topics.
We'll be right back.
The Joy of Cruising podcast guests receive a gift sponsored by GigSky of a 3 gigabyte cruise plus land data package valued at $60. Relying on ship Wi-Fi is slow, unsecure, and sometimes not available. And at foreign ports, travelers don't want to pay their carriers high fees. GigSky provides a solution that will save them a significant amount of money. To get your own data package usable on the ship or in ports, here is my link to GigSky. https://gigSky.pxf.io/NLOXOR. This can be found in the show notes below. For a 10% discount, use the code Joy of Cruising.
Well, like I mentioned before, I was in education. I love teaching in the classroom. And I'm also, I have to say, a tap dancer. Or I was a tap dancer back in the day. And I love entertaining. I love being on stage. I love people clapping for something I did. My ego is as big as anything. So I love it. But here's the thing. In order to be taken seriously, you do need to know your topics very well. So I have spent the last 10 years as a professional writer. And I think people have lots of questions about what it is to be a writer, and they're kind of intimidated to ask. So if you present yourself in a very open, very accessible fashion, people are going to ask questions. And I love that because as I'm presenting, the minute I'm off stage, I have a line of people asking questions, and that's exactly what I want. I want people to learn. I want people to get motivated to start writing and read books and do all those wonderful things. And if I can help people do that, that's great. When it comes to wine, I have to say it was my experience in Europe that really changed my perspective on, let's say, drinking in general. You can have a glass of wine for lunch. You can have a couple glasses of wine for dinner. Beer is accessible. All kinds of wonderful beer and wine that we're not used to in the United States. So when we got back from Europe, I really started studying seriously wine and beer. And I should note my husband's now a professional beer judge. So
Oh, wow.
that doesn't hurt in the house. And we are having a really nice time learning more about libations. So again, wine, people think it's pricey and it's beyond their means and they don't know much about it. So how can they enjoy it? And again, I love going in there and showing people that wine is wine. It's basically crushed grapes, and let's learn about it and let's enjoy it and let's get you motivated to try new things. So as an educator, I think it's really important that you bring passion to your subject, that you bring, of course, depth to your subject, but you make it accessible for people to learn. So perfect for a cruise ship.
You would have enjoyed a cruise I just returned from. It was into France, and one of the excursions was to a winery, and it was pretty new winery. So everything, all the equipment was state of the art, and the processes were state of the art. So we, listened to a lecture about, or it was a tour of the winery about, how wine is made. And then at the end of the tour, we sat down to a jazz concert or jazz performance, in the sort of the break area of the winery. And they served us, versions of their white and red wine. So it was, I can imagine you would have loved that.
I would have loved it.
Yeah. So what motivated you to want to speak on cruise ships, and how'd you get in it?
Okay, I had actually been on several cruises after that crossing, that epic crossing on Queen Mary 2. My husband and I fell in love with it, and we fell in love with Cunard just because of the brand. And we started cruising with them. And of course, when you cruise, you take part of all the activities and the enrichment. And I was very impressed with their enrichment speakers. I thought they were very highly informative, entertaining. And I thought maybe I could do that someday. And so my husband looked at me and said, you could definitely do that. So he kind of pushed me forward during that phase where I wasn't quite sure. And I had started writing, and my book was in process of, being put together. And I thought, you know what? Here is an audience that would like the book because it's about a cruise ship. And we'll talk about the book in a minute. But I would love to get on stage and talk about writing and books and all of that. So I auditioned with two agencies, talent agencies. They're both in the UK. And I got in. And it took a long time because they want to make sure that you're, first of all, knowledgeable, that you have the right credentials, but also that you can be entertaining on stage. And that was up my alley. So I was very fortunate to sign on with the two agencies. And in the meantime, because of the work I was doing on cruise ships, the individual cruise lines liked me. And so they signed with me directly now. So I'm working with Viking and Cunard directly as an enrichment speaker.
On the lines that you speak on, is it mostly about wine or writing, or is it just a mix?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know what? I find that on Princess, I started speaking on Princess, and they loved the wine and beer. People just were standing for the wine and beer in the locations. And I just think it depends on the cruise line. It depends on also the demographic of the ship. I'm finding that on Cunard and on Viking, they're very much interested in the books, the literature, but also the writing aspect. I'm not just an enrichment speaker on the main stage. I do writing workshops as well for these cruise lines. And okay. I get lots of people in my workshops because they've seen me on stage. and they come to a workshop and they want to learn how to do it. So I have about 12 workshops that I do on ships, and we have such a good time. They get little notebooks, they get little pens, they bring them with them all the time. I get lots of people coming back for most of them. And I'm typically booked on cruises that have many sea days because we want to keep people busy and entertained. So for voyages that have multiple sea days, I'm usually there.
Let's go way back. Well, I don't know way back. Let's go back some and talk about your introduction to cruising. When and on what ship was your first cruise?
Okay, so I would say that my first cruise was that transatlantic cruise on Queen Mary 2, but I would be lying. And my first cruise would be on an MSC ship, I think it was Davinia, when we were living in Germany, and we picked it up in Venice. And it was not a good experience. We went during August, which is famous for Europe having a holiday. So the cruise was very, very crowded. We didn't know what to expect, and it didn't really fit for us. So that would be, if I was being honest, my first cruise. The first cruise I loved would be the Queen Mary 2 transatlantic. And that was 10 years ago already. I can't believe it. It's been that long.
So that first cruise obviously didn't do it for you, but on that second cruise, it sounds like you got hooked. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I definitely got hooked on it. I never thought I was going to be a cruise person, but once you get on the ship, it's, again, every time I walk onto a ship, I get this thrilling feeling of something magical is going to happen. We're going to go from here to here to here to here, and I don't have to do anything. I can just unpack and somebody else is in charge. And I think for a lot of travelers on holiday, that's the best part. It is literally a floating hotel and restaurant. I unpack once, I show up for food, somebody else is cooking it. We can go dancing, we can go to the casino, we can see a show. It's or nothing at all. You can just sit and read a book. So I am completely hooked on it.
So after Queen Mary 2, how soon did you cruise again?
I think we booked something the following year.
Okay.
Yeah, we were both kind of we were newly retired, so we were renovating a house at the time. So in terms of finances, we're like, well, let's just do one a year. And now we do like 3 or 4. So it's become a major budget item for us, and it has escalated in terms of priorities.
Let's talk about Elizabeth Sales. What motivated you to write the book?
Honestly, guilt. Crossing the Atlantic on that gorgeous ship, I kept thinking, I don't deserve this. This is so beyond me. I really felt guilty about it. And then once I started writing, I kept thinking about the experience and what would it be like if a character or a person had to go on that ship and got forced to go on that ship. And that was they were an extreme introverted. How would they handle themselves? And I kept thinking about it because it's such an interesting experience. And I don't know how many books have actually covered this, but I wanted to cover it. I wanted to talk about it. And so I thought this would be a great setting for a book.
Did the process, well, I think I already know the answer. Let me state it differently. How did the process bring back good memories of your cruise ship life?
Well, that's a really good question, because when you write a book, it can't be all about good things. And I think that's a mistake that writers make a lot is and I made it plenty of times being a new writer. You really don't want your main character to have difficulties. You want everything to be great for them. No obstacles, no problems. But you know what? As a reader, that's really boring. So we have to throw things in our main character's way because as a reader, we want to know how she gets out of it. So what I did is I took some of the things that I really enjoyed about being on the ship and I made them problems for my main character, like walking into the beautiful dining room the first time. Now, if you're an introvert, that is the last thing you want to do because everybody's sitting down for dinner. You're feeling a little self-conscious already because you're already dressed in clothes you normally don't wear. And you have to make this grand entrance and she's by herself. So for me, not a problem. For my main character, a problem. So I took all of those things that I really enjoyed about the ship and I made them problems for her.
Well, I know that this person is a woman because her name is Elizabeth, and I hate formal night. I shouldn't say I hate formal night. I do not get dressed up for formal night anymore, although I used to. And I was very self-conscious about it. So I can relate to some of what you're saying about Elizabeth. Tell us a little more about the book. Give us a synopsis. Get our readers interested in purchasing the book, and then I'll ask you how can we do that?
Great. So basically, the book's about a ghostwriter, Elizabeth. She writes autobiographies for politicians. So you can imagine how horrible her life is right now. And she's unwilling to deal about her past and really uninspired about her future. And she's searching for her aunt's missing will on board a luxury cruise ship. In this case, it is the Queen Elizabeth. And unfortunately, it's a problem because she is an introvert. She has a list of anxieties, and all the things that she needs to do to get the next clue happen to be on her list of anxieties, thanks to her Aunt Ethel, who knows those things. And it's also a problem because she has to go different places, different times, and kind of make a fool out of herself, some things that she hates to do. And it's a lot of fun because some of the clues, it's in the Mediterranean, it's in the Canary Islands. It's actually an itinerary that the Queen Elizabeth took about 8 years ago. And there are some actual clues there that readers can find. There will be some clues on the ship that you will be able to find. And that is the beauty about being a presenter on Canard. So it's a fun book. It's been called Heartwarming, the perfect escapist read. It's been getting really great feedback. And it was just in Writer's Digest this month as a breaking in debut novel. And it is my debut novel. It is my first book. So I'm very excited about it. And for anybody who loves cruising, you will recognize pier runners, you will recognize the buffet, and everybody's jostling at the buffet, and elevators, and all the good things and bad things that happen on a cruise ship.
Now, I understand it was just released a couple of days ago. Tell our listeners how they can get their hands on the book.
Well, and that's the beauty of being traditionally published. That means with a big publisher. In my case, it's a small publisher, but we are connected with a big distributor, which is Simon & Schuster, which is great because you can get this book anywhere. You can get it in online with Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, Walmart, bookshop.org, and any bookstore. Any bookstore can order the book for you if they don't have it in stock.
Okay.
The other great thing is it's an ebook. You can get an ebook version of it, and it's now an audiobook. So we have a great relationship with Recorded Books, and they do everybody from Tolkien to Daniel Steele to all the big authors, and we've got an audio deal with Recorded Books, and so the audiobook is available as well.
Did you narrate it yourself?
Oh, no. They would never want me. They're a pretty professional company, so they have their own audio people that are professional, trained vocal artists, And so we have a really wonderful woman doing mine.
So in addition to getting their hands on the book, how can listeners follow you in general on social media and the internet?
Well, I'm on a lot of social media. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Threads. Oh my goodness. You name it, I'm probably on it. And all you would need to do is look for Kristen Owens Writer, and I should pop up. And if you're unsure, just Google me, Kristen Owens. I usually pop up towards the beginning. So I've done a lot of articles and writing over the years. So a lot of things are tagged to me, and I'm pretty easy to find.
Have you started on a follow-up book yet?
I have a follow-up book, and I actually am waiting for my publisher to give me a decision. So keep your fingers crossed.
Will it be a sequel or something totally different?
Well, it is interesting because it is called a companion book, a duology, which means it's about her sister, Victoria, who's on the Queen Victoria at the same time Elizabeth is on the Queen Elizabeth. So these two books are happening in parallel with each other. And so each story is happening at the same time, which is great because the sisters don't talk to each other. But there's some really cool Easter eggs and you can pick up any book at any time. So if Victoria gets published, fantastic. You can read that first. You can read Elizabeth first. It doesn't matter.
What do you do, Kristen, in your me time when you're not writing and you're not presenting on a cruise ship? How do you unwind?
Well, I am trying to get better at that. This has been a big focus for me for the last couple of years, and I've been learning to do a little more self-care, things that may feel frivolous, but in the end, really good to reset your mind and your body. So I'm trying to do more yoga, which I find very, very helpful. And little things like facials and going to the chiropractor regularly and just getting my physical body feeling good. I'm trying to read more. It's difficult as a writer to read because you're always looking at things and trying to, you don't have the right pair of glasses on per se. So it's hard for me to really dive into books, but I'm trying very hard to do that again.
I can relate to that. I used to be a pretty heavy reader, and in the last 5 years or so, I've been a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I've stopped reading.
Yeah, isn't it terrible?
I don't feel good about, but it's very hard to read other books now.
Mm-hmm. I have to read things that are completely different to what I write because I feel like, unfortunately, I'm always comparing myself to other writers, and you should never do that. That is like the number one rule, but yet as a human being, we do it. And so I like writing. I like writing campy women's fiction, but I love reading nonfiction. I love reading historical fiction, things that I can't pull off. I will gladly read it.
In terms of travel, do you have anything booked right now?
Oh, I do. And I'm so excited. In a couple weeks, my husband and I are taking a cruise where we're just passengers and we're just going to enjoy it. We'll be on Viking. We'll be going to 17 different port stops in the Caribbean.
Oh, wow.
I know. And the thing is, being in Florida, we've gone to the Caribbean a lot, but this is like everything in one cruise. So we're very excited. We're going to Antigua for just a beach, 10 days, all inclusive, nobody do anything exciting, read books. I'm really hoping to read some books. And then for 2025, I've actually got a lot of bookings already, which is very exciting because I love a full calendar. In January, I'll be on the Queen Victoria. In May, I'll be on the Queen Mary 2 with a transatlantic. And then I'll also be in Japan with Queen Elizabeth in May. And then I'll do another, like a New York to the Caribbean in November on Queen Mary 2. So I've got lots of things going on. It's exciting.
That sounds wonderful. And you're going to have a captive audience where you can promote Elizabeth's sales.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Are you going to take any books with you to on the trip?
So the hard part is working with a traditional publisher. I would rather that they handle that. So I am trying to work out an arrangement where my publisher sends the books forward onto the ship, which would be wonderful since I don't have to carry them then, because books are heavy.
Yeah.
And I've got lots of shoes in my luggage, and books will take up too much room. So
Priorities.
right, priorities. I need to look good. So I'm hoping that the publisher will send them forward, depending on the cruise line and how willing they are to do that. But I more than likely will take 10 with me on the ship, and I'll work with the bookstore to have them autographed and such. So yeah, there will, whenever I'm on board, there will be a book, no matter what.
We'll be right back.
Want to get an insider's perspective on life in Portugal? Then you can't miss this podcast. Tips on buying property, food, culture, best places to visit, history, lifestyle, and much more. Join us and do not miss new weekly episodes of Portugal the Simple Life podcast with amazing guests. Listen here to all episodes and subscribe now.
Good. Well, good luck with that. That sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
Before we let you go, Christine, I like to close with a couple of fun questions so that my listeners can get to know you even a little more. But first, the first question, I call this a softball question.
Okay.
It really benefits me because I get a lot of great ideas from this. So what are your favorite cruise drinks and cruise food?
Okay, this is a tough one because I'm a wine and beer person and basically anything alcohol. It's hard to drill down to one drink. So I'm just going to say my favorite drink is a generous wine pour. It can be any type of wine as long as it's generously poured.
That's the first time I've gotten that answer.
You like that? you can use that.
Yeah.
And the food, I have to say, and again, this is the Buffalo girl in me that can't believe I'm saying this. I love escargot. Who would have thought? But when it's escargot night, I am all up in that. I want the bread in there. I want my little fork. I want to take all that garlicky butter juice, and that is going to go in me because it's delicious. And I would never make that at home. I wouldn't even attempt it. It has to be done by professionals. So I'm escargot.
That is a cruise tradition for me.
Mm-hmm.
I always look forward to that on a cruise ship, and I'm always disappointed when I'm on a cruise line that doesn't serve escargot.
Right? Come on.
I will tell you though, I have only ever had it on a cruise ship, and like you, I like to dip the bread in the garlic butter and all that. However, I mentioned to you, I just got back from a cruise to Europe, or cruise in Europe, in France, specifically a river cruise, and they served escargot, and it was the first time, and I guess this is normally done, but it was the first time I had seen it. It was the first time the escargot was served in the shell.
Yes, that is a French way of offering escargot.
Yeah.
But I'm lazy. I want it deshelled.
Yeah, me.
I'm on a cruise.
Here.
I'm lazy.
And everywhere we went in France, we finished the trip in Paris. Every restaurant we went to offered escargot, but I didn't order it because I think that was kind of the norm to serve them in shell.
Yeah, and I think the French really pride themselves in fresh ingredients, and to show the freshness of the seafood, you would offer it in the shell. Just like in Belgium, when you get mussels, they're always in the shell, and it shows you their willingness to offer fresh items on the menu. So I just think it's a cultural thing.
Yeah. We did order something called moule vite, moule frite. which I didn't really
Yeah.
know was a thing, but apparently is very popular.
Yes.
So I read it's the second most
Yes.
favorite dish for the listeners is mussels and French fries.
Exactly.
And
You
I
can't go
love
wrong.
both of those separately, but like I said, I didn't know it was a thing to order them together.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's again when I'm in Belgium, that's all I eat. Doesn't matter when, where, that's what I eat.
Second question, what's your most memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
You know what? This is the most, I don't know if it's funny or odd or it could be even sad, but okay. So it was a formal night and it was on a world cruise, partial world cruise. We were on for about a month, my husband and I. I was not a speaker at the time. I was just a passenger. And so everybody's, dressed to the nines. Everybody's looking really, really smart and fancy. And all of a sudden, a gentleman at the table next to us started choking. So my husband, military guy, stands up and looks around and somebody starts screaming, somebody help him, somebody help him. So of course, my husband goes over and another gentleman goes over. And they laid the man down and, I'm not going to go through everything what happened, but they saved his life. And the staff came in, the health care workers came in, the doctor came in, and they took the man away. And it was pretty traumatic for everybody that was watching because he was probably deceased at one point.
Ooh.
And yes, and my husband was able to bring him back to life with CPR. So everybody was it was really a moment, and dinner was over with at that point. Like nobody wanted to finish their filet mignon. They were done. So everybody kind of left. And then we found out later through the assistant cruise director on the ship that the wife wasn't too happy about it.
Well, I don't mean to laugh, but
No, isn't that bizarre? Like, apparently, she wasn't real thrilled that he was still clicking. And I thought, oh my goodness! After all of that, it was very dramatic, very emotional, and the wife basically wasn't happy about the event.
Wow, that sounds like an anecdote you can slip into one of your upcoming books.
Or a totally new book.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
So apparently they'd been married for quite a while, and she was kind of ready to be single again. So, anyways,
wow.
So I don't know if that's the funniest thing that ever happened, but it's certainly the most odd.
Yeah, because you had mentioned the word funny in the beginning, but then you started telling the story, and I'm thinking like,
where's he going with this?
Where's the funny part? This sounds almost tragic. Well, it was almost tragic, but yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Then
can you imagine being in a marriage like that? That's tragic.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. So the oddball question. I know some of your I hope some of your followers, friends, and fans are listening. Welcome to the many Kristen Owens friends and fans, and we certainly hope you have enjoyed listening to the Joy of Cruising podcast, and we'll come back to listen to additional episodes. So, Kristen, share one thing that my listeners and your friends and fans don't know about Kristen.
Oh, geez. I'm kind of an open book, but there is one thing that I don't talk about a lot because it's a little embarrassing. So, of course, I'm going to tell you.
Only the world is listening.
All right. I was Miss Buffalo in 1987.
There you go.
And the only reason I did it is because I needed the money for college. So, I know that excuse is used for a lot of other things, but I really just needed the $200 to go to school.
Now, do you have a photo with the sash, Miss Buffalo?
I don't have the sash. It was a junior Miss pageant. It was the precursor to Miss America. So we had little medallions.
Okay.
And I would, unfortunately, I don't have the medallion because it's gone. So you'll just have to trust me.
Well, I mean, I do trust you. The only reason I ask is, leading up to your episode, would love to share lots of photos of Kristen at sea, or not at sea, and that would have been a nice one to slip in there.
It would have been, and I would love to see it too.
Well, Christian, thank you so much for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast. And all the best with your future bestseller, Elizabeth Sales, and all the best in your career in general. And as I like to say, we will see you on the ocean.
Thank you. It was wonderful. It was a great conversation.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.